With spring and fantastic weather rapidly approaching, there is no better time than right now to be getting your hot rod, your cruiser, or even your wife's cruiser ready for the street. But there's a handful of things to take care of, and we want to make sure you're doing them right. I see a lot of mistakes that people make with getting these things ready for the road. Are you making some of these mistakes? Come with me, let's talk about this and find out. Believe it or not, one of the first mistakes actually comes when we put these cars away. If you don't take care of the battery, they're not going to be able to crank right up for you in the springtime. I like the top-down battery charger and tender to ensure that my cars, both of them, all three of them technically, are ready to start when I want them to. Newer cars, like my wife's convertible here, or even if you've LS swapped your classic, cars with computers are going to be far more sensitive to voltage disruptions than stuff that's carbureted. So you want to make sure your battery is up to speed, and besides, I don't like buying batteries. Want to make sure it's kept up good over the winter? Keep it on a charger, keep it happy, and even through the summer if you don't drive it for a few weeks, it's nice to have the battery up to speed. Now the next thing to look at before you even roll your car out of the garage is check the tires. Having flat tires is no fun, and also having flat tires down the road where the tread comes off, beats up the sheet metal, that's even less fun. So start by checking your tires, making sure they're aired up properly, and also look for weather checks, broken rubber, issues with the rubber that could potentially, hurt the sheet metal of your pride and joy. We don't want to see that. That's never fun. Check your tires. And if you've got a tire that doesn't like to hold air that well, my drag slicks, for an example, they don't hold air as well as I would like. So I've actually put the car up on a jack stand so that way I don't hurt the sidewall, I don't run the risk of ruining the tire itself. And even though I've kept these aired up, sometimes they drift down over the course of a week or so, and just having a jack stand under there to keep the tire from getting squished can be a very safe way to do this. That way you can address it in the summertime. These cars are fun to drive. The natural tendency is to want to jump in, hit the key, and take off. But one of the things you ought to check first, especially if the car's been sitting for any length of time, is the brakes. Put your foot on the brake pedal. Do the brakes feel okay? Then you're probably in business. I've heard of way too many classics going through the garage door because the brakes failed, or they maybe just weren't properly checked. Okay, we all know to check the fluids and stuff, but the thing that usually goes on after that is you want to start the car. But here is where some real problems can arise with how the car actually runs. If the choke mechanism is got problems, it's not moving correctly, it's not set correctly, these are things that can really impact how much fun you can just jump in and have with your car. If the choke is hanging up and staying on and high revving at idle, trying to pull through stoplights, or you put it in gear and kaplonk and it tries to take off away from you, those are things that can be real problems and annoying to drive. So I know I have to check the choke on my Regal because, let's face it, I did something stupid with it in the middle of winter and I haven't corrected it yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure the choke is set to close correctly. So here's the underhood of my 3.8 V6 powered Buick Regal. This is the choke mechanism itself that we're adjusting. Inside there is a bimetallic strip that as electric current rolls through it, it gets warm and expands and sets the choke down. So what you want to do, depending on your configuration, there's typically 3 screws, 1, 2, and a third at the bottom, which is a lot of fun to get to around crusty PVC lines and heater hoses. But you're going to want to adjust this that way. And one thing you're going to want to do is reach over and adjust the throttle just a hair, and you saw the choke mechanism come up a little bit, right? Ouch. See? And then you can go a little bit further on this until it actually closes completely and everything stops moving. That's probably a fantastic place to start, and from there you can begin to tune how much longer the choke stays on by making a mark and adjusting with those dots more or less. While you are here, these choke wires, the connectors, are notorious for breaking. Make sure that yours is connected solidly onto the choke. Otherwise, if it's not making great connection, it could appear to be intact, but the choke would never come off, and that's just a terror and is a pain to drive. So make sure your choke wire is pressed into the choke mechanism like it's supposed to. And if you ever have any worries, hit the key, turn it on, and check for power on that wire. That should have a keyed 12-volt source, so that way as it runs, it pulls the choke off. If you don't have 12 volts keyed there, then there's a problem, and you know to start chasing that circuit back to find the issue. One more important step. You see in there, that's all the linkages and stuff that support the choke mechanism. Over time, those can become dirty, gritty, sticky, who knows what. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some brake cleaner to spray off those linkages and make sure they're moving freely. Because if they're sticky, what happens is when the choke is supposed to be pulling off, the choke is hung up because those linkages aren't allowed to move as freely as they need to. And depending on how it runs, if it feels like the choke pulls off too early and sets the idle down too soon before the engine is warmed up, I can come in and make a mark and add a little bit more choke. The dots on the choke mechanism make it very easy to adjust in a controlled way. And in case anyone is curious, yes, that is a piece of PVC holding the hood up. This is my Hood Prop 9000, universal, trim to fit, guaranteed to fit none right out of the box. They come in 8-foot lengths, trim it down to what you need. Another mistake I see is after you move your car out for the first time, it's ignoring those mystery puddles that just kind of appear. We don't want to address the problems, right? We only want to ignore them. Well, what if those things are like a puddle under the wheel or just behind the wheel? That would indicate that there's a brake problem going on and that it's lost some brake fluid. And if it's lost some brake fluid, it'll probably continue to lose brake fluid and then continue to cause problems down the road if we don't correct the problem as soon as we can. Because there are some systems we don't want to mess with. And plus, I know that we don't want to replace engines, transmissions unnecessarily, unless we're building them up to go faster. But yeah, we don't want to just have to replace them because they ran out of fluid and we totally missed it. This is why it's important to check the fluids regularly and make sure that these are truly roadworthy machines when they hit the road. So the next biggest failure points on classic cars that I see are heating issues, or cooling issues in this case, having your cooling system go bad, overheating, having charging system problems. So the things you got to check is the quality of your cooling system. Are the belts good? Are the hoses good? Is everything connected to it good? Is the coolant itself good? And then after you check that, check your alternator output. Just put a voltmeter between the output of the alternator and the battery while it's running, just to verify that it's got correct voltage. Just make sure that you're doing the preventative things that ensure that you're able to enjoy your classic car. Like my power steering was screaming at me. I've got a leak. I can see it from here. So short term, I'm going to tighten up all the fittings, throw some more fluid into it, and see if that makes a difference. Barring that, I'm looking at hoses and a pump, which isn't that big of a deal, but correcting these issues now before they become an issue later is the biggest, bestest thing you can do. And also, while you're under there changing the oil, take a look at your suspension parts. I've seen a lot of tie rods go bad. I've seen parts get broken unnecessarily that a little bit of maintenance would fix. Anyways, guys, get out there, check your cars over before you hit the streets. We'll see you out there.